Hello, everyone. My name is Timothy Elijah. My traditional name is Sotnyowa. Before I get started, it's important that I start off with a land acknowledgement to acknowledge the people whose territory that we are all residing on. So I'm going to do that in my language. So, Swadahosios kanjokwa, Sotnyowa ni ongets wagit sklay wagit ni wagitalot, oniota aga ni wangahunjoda. Kaliwayan dagu ondunga inga wani slate jitne wani salio kale wagatsanuni jit wagara jatwe zugona lunkwa sunkwa intizo ne yonkinola ohunjade ne ungwe huwe ne ohunjade zugona lunkwa ungwe huwe ne ohunjade ne swat nigula ne ungwe huwe danito ne ontahage on gwat nigula. So what I had said in my language was that everyone listen to what I have to say. Today is a good day and I'm happy to be here. My mother calls me Sotnyowa. That's my real name, Sotnyowa. And I said, I come from the people of the Standing Stone Nation. My community is located outside of London, Ontario. I also said that I come from a specific Bear Clan family. And I said, and my responsibility today is to give thanks to the beautiful territory of the Coast Salish people, the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. And I said that they have beautiful territory and I'm honored and I'm being as respectful and loving as I can. So today, before I get started, I want to speak about why we're here. So I want to thank all of you, the people who are here, everyone who's here in the audience, thank all of you for being here. You're all amazing. You look great. I appreciate it. The series that you are witnessing today is called Expressions of Reclamation. And the purpose of Expressions of Reclamation is to showcase and give opportunities to emerging Indigenous artists of any medium, any expression. Tonight, we're trying something different where we would just start the show off. You know, our artist that we have here today is the amazing Cameron Peal. But before he gets the opportunity to introduce himself, we have something to honor the Coast Salish people that I had been witness to before. And one of the things that I've been witness to before was that when a ceremony or an event was taking place, that they would have witnesses, people that would be asked to sit in front so that they could see what was going on. And so today, the witnesses that we have here in honor of Cameron, but also to acknowledge, again, the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, is we have two witnesses here. And if you would like to come up, I would like these two individuals to come up. So I always feel that it's important for the individuals to speak for themselves because we all have our own voice. We all have our own way to speak. And this isn't the Tim Elijah show. This is the Cameron Peal opportunity. You know, this is his show. I would like these awesome individuals to speak and introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you so much, Cameron, for having me here. My name is Carmen Aguirre. I am a local theater artist, originally from Chile, Wallamapu, which is in Latin America, also known as Abiayala in the Guna language. I am a refugee on these lands. I am not a settler. And it is an honor, Cameron, to have been asked by you to witness your work today. I've known Cameron since he was a student at Studio 58. I had the privilege of directing a play that he was in. And then you worked for us at Electric Company Theatre on Reframed and on a couple of workshops. So thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chelsea Carlson, and I'm a theater manager and theater administrator. I'm with the managing director of an organization called Savage Society. We're an Indigenous arts organization, and we tell our own stories, sourcing myth, tradition, and the contemporary Indigenous perspective. I am, on my mom's side, I'm English and Irish. And on my dad's side, my grandparents on my dad's side are Irish, and my grandma on his side is Swetmek from the interior Salish. And I'm so pleased and honored to be here, Cameron, and very touched that you would invite me to come and witness. And I will do my best to uphold that. I've had the opportunity to really just in sort of some very casual ways to intersect with Cameron, who has worked with us at Savage Society over the last year and a half intermittently. And I'm really looking forward to tonight and also to the further development of your work and you as an artist. Thank you so much. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you.
So before you two walk off, I have some gifts that I want to present you. So let me grab them. Would you mind holding this up for me so that I can talk? So in my culture where I come from, I want to give 2 feathers. So I want to give 1 feather to you, and I want to give 1 feather to you. So for me, I really love feathers, and it took me a long time to gather these feathers there. And so for my personal bundle, I want to say thank you, for coming here. I only had about 5 or 6 of those, and so I've had them for a few years. And I said, tonight's a good night to share. So I want to honor you from my heart to yours and acknowledge you. Also, thanks, Cam. We tie leather bracelets, little strings around the wrists. And in my culture, this is to protect you and to keep you connected and peaceful, more specifically peaceful. And so I want to share the peacefulness that I have in my life, and I want to share it with you and encourage you. So I have some leather bands here. If you want, I can tie them on, or we could do it later. Okay, I just want to present this to you. So that's a leather band. That's from a buffalo. So for me, thanks, appreciate it, bro. My traditional name is Tatanka Shante Wishasha, my Sundance name. It means buffalo heart, man. And so I just wanted to share a bit, again, from my heart to yours. So I want to say thank you for witnessing Cameron. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the patience and the awesomeness. What you had witnessed there is a land acknowledgement, but also you had witnessed a ceremony that had taken place for Cameron and for the people who were present here. And that was our attempt and my attempt to honor the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. And now, without further ado, let's bring Cameron on. So you can introduce yourself. I think it's important for you to introduce yourself. I want to tell you how grateful and honored that I am, for Cameron to be here. And so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Check. Check 1, 2, check. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to the witnesses. Thank you for everyone who is here in the space with me. And also thank you to everyone who's tuning in virtually. It really means a lot. Just a side thought, I felt like, if you ever watch the news with like reporters and stuff outside of like Parliament or something, and like the busy politicians are like pushing everyone away, and I felt like I was holding the mic up like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Just a thought. Why simgigat segadam hanak gubawilsik galtanix gubutgeh skok nididam doik sit samogit lachat yinam amasat gunlam. You'll have to excuse me, I don't know a whole lot about my language, but what I just said was I announced who I was addressing this part to, the chiefs, the matriarchs, members of the community, young ones. I also said that first I wanted to thank the Creator for giving us such a beautiful day. And I also want to give space and voice to the fact that it's not beautiful for everyone. For some, it's an incredible challenge. So if you have the opportunity to help out in some way for people who don't have houses, don't have easy access, please do. That's me on my soapbox. I wanted to state very clearly that although I'm very, very honored and humbled to be here sharing this piece of work with you, it's also a big work in progress. This is a big experiment for me, seeing how it works in this type of a space where it's a blend of in-person and virtual, and I just wanted to give voice to that as well. The last thing that I'll say about this piece before I get into the piece is that my traditional name is Sku Anushkibu, which means little drummer wolf. And this name was chosen for me by my grandparents when I was around 9 or 10 years old. And in our culture, the first names that were given always exemplify the story of who we have been up until that point. The idea being that stories are identity. A name holds story, and then the story tells you who I am. And that's sort of the weight that I bring when telling a more personal story like the coffee story. And it's this idea that I don't know if it's the most important thing in the world to be talking about these things, but I do know that it's a whole lot nicer when we have spaces where we can share ourselves. And so I'm very humbled to have this opportunity. I hope you enjoy. Big work in process. Take it with a grain of salt.
My days are consumed by thoughts of you. Can't get you off my brain, no matter what I do.
This isn't the ideal me. This isn't the ideal me. This isn't the ideal. What is the ideal? There's a balance to it. The taste of it, the smell of it. It burns a little. Sometimes smooth, sometimes bitter, sometimes robust, sometimes sweet. Always the thing I need. After bad news, after a bad day, after a long night to early morning, full day, after a minor victory. See, the ideal shifts, but this doesn't, and that's the problem. It's stagnant, like an unclean room. Isn't it crazy how sometimes it's the small things that help break up the rut? Sometimes I feel like I need that. This isn't regular, it's a burst of new, it's a burst of fresh air. It's a habit, it's a crutch, it's a vice, it's a passion, it's an enabler. It's a dynamic, well-developed, round-bodied, smoothly enveloping melody that swells elegantly because it's not the normal, but it's on the journey. Persistently, it shows up. Like an unwelcome flower that grows up over top the winter layer of frost that froze stuff. See, the need leads to me being more aware that the key is not just that I know enough, but that I know better. This is a thing that helps me be a regular go-getter. Available, easy access, no effort. You could find it on the street for a couple of dollars, all the way to executive offices and fancy shirt collars. And because many people want it, many others can find profit. You can start a business, get on it. It's the thing you can't go wrong with. It's addictive. Sometimes. If I wake up at 7 and I don't get my fix until 11, really, I woke up at 11. See, getting my fix is an important thing for me because Coffee to me is like coffee to a coffee addict. I mean, yeah, I know, I get it. Indigenous guy, addiction, who could have seen it coming? Big surprise. Here's to repeating the cycles. See, this is something that I always wonder whenever I meet people. Like, have you ever been addicted to something? See, for me, I think the problem is that I keep bouncing around different substances. For young me, it was juice. Juice was my jam. See, I think I drank more juice than I did water. I cannot tell you how I didn't die of dehydration before the age of 10. My blood sugar level must have been through the roof, goodness me. So I'm somewhere between 3 and 4, and it's been about 2 weeks since we've been at my Gigi Annette's house. Side note, Gigi equals grandmother. That'll be on the test. So it's been about 2 weeks since we've been at Gigi Annette's house, and this is important because Gigi Annette has something that's important to me. She has my sippy cups. Yeah, I was 4 years old, a little old to be using sippy cups, but whatever. That keys into it. So at that time, I was the youngest in my family. And like a lot of youngest in the family type people, I was very concerned about how do I become cool and wise and old? Well, you see, the answer was at Gigi Annette's house also, because she drank a lot of coffee and she had those coffee travel mug things, right? It's like the ones with the little flip cap, and they're like insulated for like a few hours or something like that, double-walled. They're coming out with new things every year. Anyways, it struck me the first time that I saw her using those, because it was like, oh my goodness, those look exactly like my sippy cups, but for like grown-ups. And she looked like she was having a great time using them. She looked so cool and wise and old. So somewhere along the line, I convinced her to let me have juice in the coffee cup. Juice in a coffee cup. Back to the story. 2 weeks, haven't been there in a while. I need my fix. I need the coffee cups. I need the juice. My palms are sweating. I've got the shakes. I'm anxious. I'm moody. Finally, we pull up to the driveway. I fly out of the car, fly up the steps, throw the door open, say, "I'm here, Gigi." No answer. But it doesn't matter, because immediately my eyes lock onto the prize. I can see it. Right to the left of the door on a little side table thing, there's a red metal mug with a black plastic top. And I'm amazed. She read my mind. She didn't even know that this is what I was coming for. But I was like, yes! She knows I'm here for the good, so that's the most important part. So I run right up to it, and I grab it with both hands, because I still drink responsibly even at that age. Grab it with both hands, and I throw it back, and my tongue is on fire. It's savory, it's bitter, it's sour, all at the same time. You ever see like videos of like scientists who like throw, I don't know, like a wrench into some acid and it just starts sizzling and disappearing? That's what my tongue felt like. Right at that moment, as I'm in the worst agony of the 4 years that I've been alive, I'm basically dying. In walks Gigi Annette, and she just throws her head back and she starts laughing away at my expense. So much for cool and wise and old. I mean, then again, I am Indigenous or Aboriginal or Native or of the First Peoples or a minority. That one depends on where I'm at. It's kind of a spatial thing. Or Injun. Not Indian, I'm not from India, Injun. I-N-J-U-N. It's a funny word, Injun, because it has so many different meanings. It's so wide-ranging, and it wasn't a word that we came up with. I'm not knocking it. It's like if I meet some creature for the first time, or at least that's what I'm thinking in my mind anyways. I meet something for the first time and I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen this. Does anyone around me know what this thing is? No? Okay, you're Indian. You're an Indian now. There you go. We found it. We succeeded. It also means a whole lot of other things too. See, it's really funny because in certain conversations with people, you can tell that there's a tenseness to the room when I bring that up, because it's like, oh my God, you're not supposed to say that. That's not correct. But if you hang out with me and my family and it's just us, we throw that word out like it's like there's no tomorrow. It's like a mini reclamation, in a way, of a name tag. Sometimes it means subject to addiction. Sometimes it means high poverty rates. Sometimes it means incredibly high unemployment rates. Sometimes it means unable to access reasonable housing in a reasonable part of the town that you're in. Sometimes it means you get funny looks in the grocery store because you're wearing a feather in your hair or something like that. Sometimes it means you get shouted at because you're wearing beads. It's hard to tell what it really means, but anyways, it's just all words, isn't it? So I started researching addiction just because, again, it's something that I'm surrounded by and therefore curious about. And it was a little puzzling to me that I couldn't come across super recent information from Stats Canada. The closest information I could get to was 2016. You could find it online. It's an archived study. And they were talking about how, I believe it was about 24% of Indigenous people between the ages of 12 and 24 were addicted. They were alcoholics. And so the way they defined it on the website was an alcoholic is someone who consumes 12 or more heavy drinks of liquor in a day. And I thought, that's a pretty broad way to define it. But then I started to think even further about that. Like, that information itself is really broad. Like, okay, let's say we've got 10 people in a room. 2 people, if you're, 14, you're addicted, you're an alcoholic, you have hard alcohol daily or something like that. And I just thought, that's so weird how unspecific it is. Because the other thing, too, is that this is where stories start to factor into it. Is that we've got the numbers, but we don't really have all the stories. Stories about addiction help humanize the way we interact with people who are addicts. So the first time I tried coffee, I was like about 11 or 12 years old, and it was summer. I was spending the summer back home in the village where my mom grew up in, which is on our traditional territory. It used to be called a reservation, but eventually we won the right to own our land back in a court case that concluded in the year 2000, and it took like 50 years of legal work. Anyways, so I'm back home in the village. 11 or 12, and I'm spending a lot of time with one of my cousins. He's 1 year older than me. Therefore, he is the coolest person that I have ever met and who will ever exist. I have to do everything he does. So one day he asked me, hey, Cameron, I'm making some coffee. You want some coffee? And I was like, do I want some coffee? I mean, my first time was terrible, and I never tried it again after that. But I also didn't want to lose face. So I said, yeah, sure. I love coffee. I have it every day back home. I grind my own beans, and and he was like, okay, cool. I'm making some Folgers. You want to help? I was like, yeah. I mean, I already know everything that there is to know about coffee, so it's like, maybe I'd be too much help, but like, you know, I love the Folgers jingle because it's kind of lying, depending on your tastes. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. I disagree. Anyways, he's got the machine. It's a Black & Decker. It's like black plastic, and the coffee pot, it's glass. And it's kind of faded. It's like a little bit of a beige color. You could still see through it, but it's, I don't know how many years old. You have to wait until glass gets to be stained by coffee. But anyways, stained coffee pot. It's got the little nest thing, the little coffee nest where you put the filter. So he puts the filter in, puts the grinds in, closes it up, pours the water in. And like, I'm like, what? There's a lot that goes into this bean tea thing that you've got going on here. He flips the switch. It's like the first time I heard that machine start up, it was like I spent my whole life with my fingers in my ears, and for the first time I was just pulling them out. So wild and so, it's like a kind of noise, and like very slowly the coffee started to drip into the coffee pot. And I was a little worried because I remember my first time was horrible, absolutely terrible. I didn't want to do it ever again. Why would anyone put themselves through that? See, at the time, I didn't realize that adults made juice from beans for energy. Who would have thought? Anyways, I'm there in internal battle, like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I chicken out? Is he going to tell every one of our friends in the village? Am I going to be a loser? Blah, blah, blah. Coffee's done. He pours it. He sets it all up for me how he likes it. Lots of cream, lots of sugar, like lots of sugar. Oh, goodness. And I take the first sip. And the first initial reaction was, It was hot. Don't blame me. The second reaction, this isn't what I remembered. What's going on here? See, I remembered the savory, the sweet, the sour, the bitterness. This was sweet and creamy, and I felt my energy go way up. I was hooked. And then every other day that summer, we had coffee. It was our morning ritual. Could you believe it? An 11-year-old getting hooked on coffee every day. Goodness. For context, I also got into the habit about a year and some change ago. I made the dumbest mistake of starting to try cigarettes. Don't try it if you haven't, please. It was in answer to some really bad news, and I was in a really bad spot. I was expecting money from like student loans or something, and it hadn't shown up for like a few months for some reason that I still don't know why. Anyways, kind of a really low point, and it was there, so I tried it. Don't try it. That's just to give context, though, that I'm not just talking about coffee. Don't worry, I'm on Nicorette now. I'm fascinated with this thing, though, because there's so much context that's just not talked about. So I was doing research on criminal levels of addiction, where people are getting caught with high-end, terrible drugs, no judgment, and they're getting locked up. Some of these people have something going on in the psychology department. It's called sensation seeking. The idea is that a sensation seeker lives purely in the moment, and all their only goal is to get the next greatest sensation. It doesn't really matter what the cost is, because the sensation that you get from the thing is so great that it all works out in the end. So Addictions are a big thing for Indigenous people in Canada, and I imagine for the rest of Turtle Island, though I don't have enough experience or research on that. But why is that? You know, I heard this question a lot growing up when I was younger, like younger than 15 or something like that. Why don't you just get over it? What's the big deal? Well, okay, imagine this. Imagine that, it's a few different scenarios. Imagine you're an adult, right? And someone comes along and tells you that, I don't know what the pitch is exactly, but it's like, the future is now. We need to be educating people into a better, higher society. And so like, we'll take your kids to this boarding school. The reaction on that is very varied. But that happens. So they go to this boarding school and they're surrounded by bad behavior. Surrounded by terrible examples of what it's like to be a person. And then they come back, the ones that can come back. And how do they be people now? Well, the only example they had was of a crooked power structure. And so what do? They enact out the crooked power structure because they don't really know what the other side is. Not only that, they have things inside themselves that they need to fix, but they can't do it because they also didn't get examples of what it's like to fix yourself in a healthy way. And so then, well, imagine you find something that makes you feel good, even if it's only for like 2 hours, an hour, 30 minutes, 20 seconds. You find something, and it doesn't hurt you immediately. You feel good, you feel great, you can ignore some things for a little while, you can ignore that you have some things inside you that need to be fixed, and it's there. Nobody's saying don't do this, aside from a list of harder substances, but it's like alcohol. Okay, I get it. I've seen it. I've seen the cycle of it. The cycle isn't some far-off imaginary spaceship of a thing that we can all look at. The cycle is the behavior. It's the idea that I've got something that's happened to me, I've got the reaction, I've got my response to it, and the response creates a new reaction that's better than the first one. And so then my brain starts to be like, oh, okay, I get it. If we follow that path again, we'll keep feeling great. It's not great long term, and I'm not saying that it's great. I'm not making any value judgments on it. I'm just framing the picture. It's not surprising to me that sensation seeking, it was surprising to see how it was worded, because I hadn't heard someone word it that way before. But it wasn't surprising at all in the concept of it. I was like, I've seen this. I know exactly what this looks like. And it's not some crazy Hollywood image of some person in raggedy clothing who's like hasn't shaved in 4 years, even though that may be the case for some people. It's family members, it's friends, it's people who I've spent time with, it's people that I love, people that I care about, people that I love to be around. So what's there to do? One other thing that I found in my research, some good news for those of you who don't already know. How do you help someone who has very bad cyclical behavior? They keep doing something over and over again that's not good for them and is not good for other people. And how do you do it while also staying true to yourself? Because it can be a hard thing trying to deal with and manage living with someone like that. So there's this thing called loving detachment. The idea and the core phrase is that I am not responsible for you, your choices, your beliefs, or your actions, but I will be responsible to you. You're going to fix it all on your own, and I'm going to be here. I'm going to do everything I can to be a supportive structure, but it's on you. And I can't help but think that there's some sort of parallel here in my mind. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's like, what are we dealing with today? The fallout of bad behavior building up. The fallout of people believing in things that are more harmful to others than they are beneficial to others. You know, there's some hot words for it. There's colonization. There's this, that, and the other thing. And there's counter words to it. Decolonize this. Let's diversify that. Okay, sure, I'll be here for that conversation. But it's bad behavior. How do you live next to someone, and how do you uphold yourself to someone, even if they weren't the progenitor of it? Because that's not the system. You hear that too. The system is this, the system is that. We need to fight the system, fight the power. The system is something that exists by our participation in it. So a system, you can't have a system without the people to participate in it. So how do you interact with someone when they might not be on the best side of the system, but you might be, or whatever? It's that loving detachment thing. It's this idea that something's going on. I'm not going to be responsible for anyone else's participation in it, but I'm going to be responsible to these people. You get community that way. You get a sense of humanization of it, where it's like being seen. Really being seen. I mean, I don't know. It's all wild theories and whatnot, so grain of salt. Don't worry, this is the last bit. I've lost a lot of family to addiction. I know lots of family who are still in the throes of it. I myself am dealing with aspects of it. But there is a silver lining. There's this idea in my mind that if we can get more of the story of it, then more people will understand the complexity of it, and more people will be willing to be more there. And then you won't hear the phrase so much, well, why can't you just get over it? Why don't you just do something better? Why don't you not do it? It's like as a kid, okay, if I could, I would have attended AA, apple juice addicts. Apple juice is 2 words. It's not as catchy though, AJA. It's funky. Speaking about these things, I can get it. I mean, partly it's just that it's hot as heck in here, but I also get a sense that there's a thickness to the space of it. There's a weight to it. And who knows? Maybe all of this is just too much overthinking, but I like to think that part of the drive for me to keep going on is that, so my people are very spiritual. We have this idea of an afterlife and of a journey beyond this physical one. So I hold that belief that there is some sort of afterlife where I'll see some people that I haven't seen in a long time. And so the question I have to ask myself every time I set out to do some work and I'm afraid or I'm worried, what kind of story am I going to tell those people when I get to see them again? What kind of a story am I going to tell them about what I chose to do, what I chose to think, what I interacted with, what I fought against, what I fought with, what I stood by and watched, what I bear witness to? I have a lot of questions that I'd love to ask a lot of people too who aren't here. I mean, I don't know. You think they serve iced coffee in the afterlife?
So I'm living life without you, and
Wow. I was there. I was there.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. I will say a big thanks to everyone who's in the room right now. I know it's warm as all get out, and it's also warm outside, but I really do appreciate, especially at this point in our journey with this whole pandemic thing. So I'm very, very humbled and honored that people would come out and share space with me. That's the best I can ask for.
Thank you. I was there, and I know I've said that a few times already. It was more than just a story. It was more than just an expression. It was a lesson. For me, there was ups and there were downs and ins and outs, comedy, seriousness, the coffee. My mom loved coffee. My mom loved coffee, and I remember when I was watching her growing up, I said, I'm going to be a coffee drinker like her because I'm going to be an adult, you know? To me, drinking coffee was a sign of being an adult, you know? And that's where you had me. You know, I know I'm jumping right into it right off the bat, but I'm just inspired just to just get it out. And the messages that were in there, I felt like my kokam, my aksota, my grandmother was there. You know, I felt like my auntie was there talking to me, you know. The message about, you can explain it yourself. How I seen it was that the coffee was significant in the sense that it identified more than just a coffee addiction, you know. The vulnerability that I believed you showed at the end, where you said, I'm not saying you're not in addiction, but that you have those tendencies, is how I heard it. That vulnerability, when you express that, that's when I realized, wow, this isn't a story. This is a way to get a lesson and a teaching and encouragement to try something else out. And like, I can talk and talk and talk, but I'm just gonna let it go. And if you could tell us, how are you feeling now that that's out? You know, I understand it's a work in process, so how do you feel having this opportunity in this hot room and you know, just tell us, you know?
Well, I feel quite good about it. I feel a lot better now than I did this morning waking up to it. I'll admit that openly and freely. I also kind of, see, because it's a work in progress and I'm always tweaking it, the script of it changes a lot. And so I imagine if there's anyone who's following along, it might have been a little bit confusing because I kind of jumped around and I had to remember, okay, where do I end? But yeah, I feel like this was it's like a bird that's touching down in a long journey is the sense that I get, is that, you know, I get to be in this space and share these ideas with people in the room. And so it was very informative to me just about the vibe, like the vibration that I got in this room told me a lot of things at different moments, because it's like, oh, okay, this part seems to induce this with this crowd. This part seems to get this reaction. And, you know, it changes with crowd size too, of course. If it was a whole lot bigger, I'd probably get bigger reactions. And the smaller a crowd is, the more intimate it feels generally, in my experience. All of which, to wrap around back to the main idea, is that I feel good. I feel really good. And feel like my process has a lot more places to go now.
Good, good. And what you just said there is you feel good that it's out. That's the purpose of Expressions of Reclamation, is to give emerging Indigenous artists the opportunity to feel what it feels like to have an audience, to have witnesses, to have cameras, you know, being on live, you know, being live streamed. That's it, you know. Everyone who's here in the audience, thank you for being here. And everyone who is online and watching us, thank you. I want to commend all of you for your time, your time that you've given, to Cameron here, to listen to his story, to listen to his words. So throughout this question and answer period, we're going to do popcorn style. So if there's anybody who's in the audience here, if you have any questions for Cameron, it's a great opportunity to ask. And for people who are online as well, you can ask questions. We have somebody who'll translate it for us or send it to us, and then he'll be able to answer it. If you have questions for me as well, I'm open, but remember, the time is for Cameron. Okay. We have a question?
Hi, Cameron.
Hello.
Thank you for presenting your beautiful work today. You mentioned a couple of times that you consider this to be a work in progress. Do you think there's any final result that you'll land on, or will it kind of evolve forever? And then if I had a follow-up question, it would be, what would be your ideal audience to show this to?
I'll start with the last one first and then go back to the second one. The ideal audience for me, I actually really kind of like smaller audiences like we've got here, because there's that intimate atmosphere to it, where there's that closeness. If the audience gets a little too large, then I start to sort of lose the faces for the audience. Like I can't see the trees in the forest. But that, it's also nice to play in front of a big audience too. That's kind of fun to hear the big applause and all that stuff. In terms of the work in progress part of it, I feel like this will continue to evolve for a long while still, partly because as a show, it tries to voice these ideas that I have that are with me constantly. Like, it's a little different from talking about like just one story like 5 years ago, because I can look at the story and be like, that's the story. And then I can talk about it. And eventually, the story ends because time moves on. With this one, I touch upon so many different things and just behaviors more than story. So the short answer is I'm not entirely certain myself, but I feel like each time I get the chance to touch down with it, I feel like it gets more and more solid. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cameron. We have an anonymous question here. As your artistic practice spans many disciplines, which one, according to you, has been the most effective or interesting to you?
The most effective and or interesting to me. I think at this point in time, the most interesting to me has been directing. I haven't done a whole lot. It's it's entirely been like assistant to the director. So I'm there, I'm taking notes, I'm watching, I'm absorbing. I'm not really doing a whole lot. But it was something that really informed me about what it looks like on the other side of the table. So like I know how it feels to be here, the actor, the presenter, the performer. And there's a whole lot of like artsy, schmartsy stuff with like, oh my God, I'm feeling this and I've got my motivation and yada, yada, yada. But doing the other side of the table work as a director, it really clued me into this idea that, those things matter, but also there's a point where they don't matter. And I mean to say that it comes down to a lot of it. What does the audience see? What does the audience hear? And that's largely, that's the whole kit and caboodle. It's important to take care of yourself as an artist, but also at the same time, they're not going to see all of the things that we do as the actor, as the presenter. They're not going to know all of the things. And the directing work just helped me let go of needing to worry about what people thought about those things. I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Those were great questions. I'm really enjoying how this is taking place. I'm enjoying that you have this opportunity and this space to speak. We only have a few more minutes left. I do have 2 questions for you. And the one question that I wanted to ask you that, for me, I'm always curious of artists is what inspires you, who inspires you, and where does that come from, that inspiration? And yeah, and then I'll ask the second question after that.
Yeah. So the short answer is there's 2 answers to that. The first and foremost is just everyday people, legitimately. Like I hang out with artists a lot. Like that's my core group. But it's always and I don't mean every day as in a value judgment or some sort of like higher or lower, none of that. I'm talking about people who just aren't artists or aren't like that. Whatever. Because it really helps ground me in reality just speaking about these things with someone who isn't an artist, because then I just sort of stop worrying about all the fluff of it. And the other part too, the reverse of the coin is artists. One, artists that I'm surrounded by always inspire me, just being able to talk with them. But also there's a number of artists that are quite big and famous that I'm a big fan of, from a wide variety of genres too. I mean, if you're a close friend, you know that I quote Dave Chappelle way too often. Kendrick Lamar, Black Thought, Maimouna Youssef, and then there's all over the place is the short answer.
That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. And I like how, from what you shared with us, in your words, how it makes sense now where your inspiration comes from because of how you were speaking and what you were sharing. You know, it makes sense. That's where your inspiration comes from. You know, there are so many more questions that I have. You know, there are so many more minutes that I want to offer you that we could give you. You know, that's what I want. You know, but before we wrap up, I wanted to acknowledge you and honor you. So I have a gift, you know, for you as well. And it's a little simple, you know, but for me, it's a really important thing, you know. So if you're open to it, I want to offer you this white eagle feather. You know, this feather comes from the tail, you know, of an eagle. This feather was given to me as a gift a long time ago, you know, and I wanted to pass it on to you, you know. What I was always told is, as a speaker and somebody who uses your voice and our voice, that it's important to have something in our hand to keep us grounded, you know, to keep our words true, you know. And I was told that some of the greatest speakers, some of the most inspirational individuals, when they talk, that they usually have an eagle feather in their hand. And I was told that that eagle feather is what connects us to our Creator, you know. And so I wanted to offer you this as a gift to honor and acknowledge you and to support you in the work that you're continuing to do, you know, because the message that you shared with us here is that it's more than just an addiction to coffee, you know, for us to look at the reasons why somebody is the way that they are, or, you know, to be a little more compassionate. That's what I took from it anyways. And for me, I want to commend you. So in my culture, the way that we give gifts is I will present this to you 3 times. And then on the 4th time, if you choose to take it, then you'll grab it from my hand. So I believe I did that 3 times already.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Yo. Yo. If I could shake your hand, I'd shake your hand. But, you know, COVID.
We're almost there.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you to everybody. We have no time right now. Everybody that's here in the audience and everybody that's online, I'd like you to take a few minutes to look at a survey that we have as well and ask some of the questions, or answer some of the questions that we're asking you and how you feel about what you had witnessed here today. And so I just want to say thank you. I raise my hands to all of you. In my language, Ezugonalunkwa swakwego ne gaingawa ne slate ne gonalunkwa ne nagiwa. Thank you, everyone. You are all a medicine to me, and I love you from my heart to yours. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Excellent.